Brendan and I were best friends since kindergarten. Our houses were located on the same horseshoe-shaped street, just on opposite ends. We didn't discover each other's existence until our mothers met one another while on a walk around the block. A meeting was arranged, and we quickly bonded over typical kid shit like Ninja Turtles and Star Wars, as well as not-so-typical shit like a shared love of seeing cows suffer abuse in cartoons. As we both entered school, teachers soon learned the educational value of keeping us separated, lest we distract each other with stupid jokes that only 5-year-olds would find funny. Things between us remained pretty much unremarkable in that way until high school. Starting in our freshman year, his parents adopted a different attitude regarding his education. It suddenly became essential that he get the best grades possible. I'm not sure if this was because of his age, or if they'd seen something on the news about how competitive college has become, but the change was sudden and drastic. It was kind of scary, actually. I didn't like going over to his house anymore due to the subtle, nagging ways in which his parents would seem to criticize him for daring to spend time with a friend instead of working on school stuff. They never turned this attitude on me, at least not outright, but more than once I felt them giving me pitying, condescending looks that bordered on disdain. Overachievement is its own punishment. The goal isn't any actual accomplishment, it's all about striving for more just because you can. Forget being happy, you'll never even be content with that kind of attitude. And when you finally hit an obstacle on your way up, the impact can devastate you. We all have limits of some kind, but someone with that kind of mindset refuses to accept that, and may be driven to horrible things in the pursuit of pursuit. Cheating, sleep deprivation, drugs, and far, far worse. Brendan's emphasis on academics escalated dramatically with each new school year. There were fewer and fewer hangouts, replaced by hours worth of studying to ensure a perfect grade on every project, test, or lurking pop quiz. It was more than a little frustrating for more than one reason. I almost never saw him outside of school, and the conversation never drifted too far away from it either. Add on top of that the fact that his parents' holier-than-thou disposition seemed to be rubbing off on him, and you can see the problem. I started to be grateful for the fact that we never seemed to spend more than 15 minutes together. This all came to a head starting in our senior year. With college looming on the horizon, the pressure was never greater, just as the work was never so intense. Brendan added applications and scholarships to his already bloated schedule, filled with AP courses and extracurricular activities that he couldn't stand. Toward the end of the first semester, things were getting bad for Brendan in calculus. He clearly was struggling to understand the material. His parents had even gone so far as to hire a tutor, but even this only got his grades up to a B- level, unacceptable by their standards. One day at school, I tried to make him feel better, tell him that B's are perfectly fine, and it's not as if he was at risk of not graduating or anything. But far from being comforted, this just seemed to make him angry. "You just don't get it," he would say, one hand gripping his hair. "The way things are going now, the only way to prevent fucking your future is to get into the best programs of the best colleges. That means grades. The best of the best. Not only to be accepted, but to get the scholarships that pay for tuition." That was when Luke decided to take a seat at the table. Luke would have been the most beloved, popular kid in the entire school of 2,000 students if he wanted it. He was certainly handsome enough. As it was, he seemed content to just be generally liked by everyone who he encountered. His overall demeanor was charming, pleasant. He always wore a smile, no matter how small, and he had an uncanny talent for knowing how to hold a conversation. It always seemed like he knew just what to talk about, how to talk about it, and when to move on to something else. I didn't notice it at first, but looking back on it, it really sticks out. 4 years of dealing with people in college courses filled with people of varying ages has taught me a lot about conversation, and only now is Luke's obvious knack for it so, well, obvious. I didn't talk much with Luke, but then I'm not sure anyone did. Everyone in high school usually has a certain population which they gravitate towards. Clique is the sort of cliche word for it, but the reality is a little bit more complicated than that. I don't think our high school cliques were ever as staunchly divided as they are on TV, but if you put the 500 of my graduating class into one room, sooner or later, they would sort themselves into distinct groups. Except for Luke, that is, who seemed to flirt from one clique to the other while I was keeping primarily to himself. "Hey guys," he said with a friendly smile. "Sorry, couldn't help but overhear, but I thought I heard someone say something about trouble with calculus?" Neither of us said anything. "I mean, I'm not judging or anything, I was just wondering if you guys wanted to take a look at my notes." Being satisfied with my B-, I said nothing. Brendan just snorted, rolling his eyes slightly. "Oh dude, not cool," Luke said, looking slightly affronted. "Just wanted to help." "Sorry," Brendan said almost begrudgingly. "It's just this calculus stuff is killing me. No offense, Luke, but I don't really see how your notes could really do anything about that." "Couldn't hurt to take a look," Luke said. "Here, why don't you give me your email, I'll send them to you. You can look them over, see if you can't get anything out of them." Brendan didn't look convinced. "I don't know." "Come on," Luke said. "I mean, I'm pretty sure Navarra is going to be giving us a quiz on Friday. Couldn't hurt, right?" Brendan let out the smallest of sighs with the kind of face that comes a few hours after eating fried onion rings. "How are you doing in calculus?" he eventually asked. "I'd have an A+ if I remembered to do homework more than every other day," he said with a chuckle. After what must have been a solid minute of awkward silence, Brendan shrugged and said, "Alright, fine." "Sweet," Luke said, reaching into his pocket and taking out a crumpled scrap of paper. "Here, let me get your email address. I'll have to type them up. My handwriting is shit." Brendan lazily jotted his email address, and Luke stuck the paper carelessly back in his pocket. I had my own share of troubles, both school-related and otherwise, to worry about, so I mostly forgot about this encounter. But then Friday came, and sure enough, Luke was right. Navarra did give us a quiz. We wouldn't find out the results until the next week, but I already had a feeling that Luke's notes might have done the trick. Overall, Brendan didn't seem as uncomfortable during the quiz, not as much fidgeting or vacant staring at the paper. When the quizzes came back, Brendan was only too eager to show off the perfect A+ he'd received, practically waving it 5 inches from my face. I jokingly wondered at first if his mom would stick it to the refrigerator with a dinosaur-shaped magnet. Luke came up to us during lunch that day. "Hey man, how'd it go?" he asked, as if Brendan's doofy grin wasn't answer enough. "Perfect," he said. "I even got the extra credit." "Sweet deal, man," Luke said, grinning widely himself. "Think you'd be able to send me more of your notes?" Brendan asked, leaning in slightly. Luke thought about it for a moment before nodding and saying, "Yeah, sure. How about I send them twice a week? Wednesdays and Fridays?" "That'd be great," Brendan said. It seemed like a pretty good arrangement. Weeks passed and every homework assignment, pop quiz, and unit test was met with the same well-earned confidence from Brendan. The semester came and went, with Brendan getting the highest grades in the class, of course. His improvement was enough to pique the curiosity of anyone. I asked him one day what it was about Luke's notes that helped him so much. "I really couldn't tell you," he said. "There's just something about the way he writes and explains things that just, I don't know, makes it click in my head. He tells me to read them before going to bed, that way the information stays with me as I sleep." Brendan showed me a section of Luke's notes on differential equations, and I didn't really see what the appeal was. Sure, the information was pretty clear, but it didn't stick with me in any meaningful way. When I told this to Brendan, he just waved it off, saying, "Well, duh, Luke typed these notes for me, not you." A few weeks into the second semester, it looked like Luke and Brendan hit a bit of a snag when a pop quiz caught Brendan by surprise after Luke had failed to send that week's notes the previous night. As you can probably imagine, Brendan was less than thrilled. Luke sat with us that day at lunch, putting his hands up as if in preparation for Brendan's oncoming verbal assault. Hey dude, I'm really sorry about last night. Some stuff came up, personal issues. I didn't have time to get the notes to you. Could have said something, Brendan said, practically snarling at him. Be lucky if I didn't fail that quiz. Like I said, Brendan, I'm really sorry, Luke said simply. Brendan let out a frustrated sigh, folding his arms. Can you make sure this won't happen again? I was starting to get annoyed by Brendan's attitude. Dude, back off, I said, putting down my sandwich. He's offering to help you. You could be a little nicer. Brendan eased a bit as if realizing the levels of asshole he was starting to sink to. Sorry, Luke. I just take classes really seriously. I don't think I can afford another quiz like that. I'm trying to maintain as high a GPA as I can. I get it, Luke said. But I can't really guarantee anything, I mean, life just kind of happens. Can't promise nothing will come up between now and the next test. Brendan balled his fists, clearly bugged by the fact that Luke was right. How about this, Luke said. What if I show you my technique for taking notes? That way you'll never have to rely on me ever again. The possibility clearly intrigued Brendan. That could work. How long do you think it would take? Not long, I don't think, Luke said with a small shrug. 20 minutes? Half hour? Here, why don't you find me on Facebook? We can chat about it more there. All right, Brendan said, his spirits already lifted. Your name is O'Connor, right? Yeah, and the picture is of me with a goat, Luke said. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to ask you. What? Brendan asked. If you can't do it, that's fine. But since Valentine's Day is coming up, I was wondering if you could stop by a flower shop on Saturday and pick up some roses for me. Red ones. I do it on my own, but I have a family thing to go to. Brendan took his sweet time answering. I could tell this was more due to reluctance than it was to any potential schedule conflicts. So I spoke for him. I mean, I know you're not doing anything. You should go. You do kinda owe him. Yeah, right, Brendan said, relenting. Dude, Luke said, offering a high five, which Brendan accepted with about as much enthusiasm as dental surgery. I could tell that Brendan had followed through on his promise to Luke by the small cut on his right hand, which he explained came from his careless handling of the roses. As such, Brendan once again became moderately pleasant to be around. The pressure seemed to ease up, and the good grades returned. Luke made a bit of a spectacle when he offered the flowers to his girlfriend, Jenny Stevens, in the middle of the cafeteria, causing most people around to applaud or let out sentimental awws. Despite the tremendous favor that Luke did for Brendan, he didn't really appear to have any interest in developing any closer of a friendship with either of us. The two of us were never even friends on Facebook. Hell, for the longest time I didn't think he even had a Facebook. I remember looking for his profile when he moved to town in our sophomore year and having no luck. His perfectly ordinary name probably didn't help matters, which is probably why he needed to specify his photo to Brendan. I'm the sort of person who prefers to wait for other people to friend me, so even though I finally found his profile through Brendan's, I didn't reach out. And he didn't reach out to me either. You played that game before, right? The who will bite first kind? Soon enough, the end of the year came. Luke didn't hang out with us, in much the same way that he didn't really seem to hang out with anyone. After teaching his secret to Brendan, he stopped joining us at lunch and paid us no more heed than an occasional wave or smile in the halls. Soon enough, the end of the year came, graduation along with it. Talk about tedium. Cap and gown, diploma. When your school is as big as mine, you just want it to be over. The best part was when Brendan gave his valedictorian speech, which, no offense to Brendan, is not to say that it was a particularly rousing speech. It was a stereotypical spiel about how hard work and all that crap, and how we should never expect things in life to be handed to us. How's that for irony? 2 hours later, that it was all done. I don't remember seeing Luke at graduation, but then it's easy enough to get lost in a crowd of 500 identically dressed people. The 3 of us all went our separate ways, as is to be expected for high schoolers. I heard something about Luke going to study abroad in Scotland, but I haven't heard about him since graduation. Brendan, meanwhile, went to study biomechanical engineering at MIT, a well-respected and prestigious field to which he had expressed no previous interest in whatsoever. As for me, I first tried going to an art school in New York City before transferring to a community college upstate. Now I'm studying animal management. Don't bother asking me how that transition happened. I'm not entirely sure myself. As you could probably imagine, a field like biomechanical engineering is pretty demanding, which is why Brendan dropped off the face of the earth. Being so far away, our only means of communication were texting, Facebook, and the like. But after just a few months into his freshman year, he just stopped posting online. And getting a response over text was about as easy as getting an answer out of a statue of a dead man. He kept in contact just enough to let me know that whatever technique Luke had taught him for taking notes in high school did not transfer well at all to his college workload. I didn't find out about his suicide until about a week after it happened. It took a while for his roommate to find him, given that the roommate liked to spend the night at his girlfriend's. The body was found in the shower, crumpled into an uncomfortable position with clear bloodstains on the stark white walls and floor. Looked like he wanted it to be as painless as possible, which makes sense for him. Went to the wake, did my fair share of crying along with everyone else. Couldn't even look at his parents, who were mostly silent and solemn. I got the strange impression that I wasn't the only one who felt certain that they played a role in this, whether or not they knew it or accepted it. 2 years later, I just tried to remember Brendan as he was before high school, and the good times we shared then. I suppose sometimes I feel like I view his death as a cautionary tale that happened to someone else, and that Brendan and I just drifted apart, so far apart that we left each other's lives. It's a tale that I take to heart as I head into my senior year of college. My workload has never been as intensive as it was for him, given my school and major, but it can still be more than a little stressful. It's for that exact reason that I made sure to choose electives that I thought would have a fun workload, if not a low or easy one. Over the course of my college career, I've taken Dinosaur Paleontology 101, Writing for Television, and Folklore and Mythology, my current elective. It's interesting enough, especially since so much of it is reading stories. Ancient stories about the power of names and the caution that must be used when introducing yourself to strangers. Stories about arcane pacts and deals sealed in blood. Stories of insidious beings who grant whatever you wish, but never what you want.